Now let's bring in some basic geometry so that we can show how to scale, move, and rotate parts. And so what I'll do is click on Meshmix to bring open the primitives panel, and I'll drag in this jelly donut torus form. And notice that when I bring it in, I actually dragged and dropped it off to the side so that it wasn't touching the bunny. And then what we see on that torus is that in the center, there's a widget that lets us move it around in space. And so if I grab on that blue arrow and drag, it's going to move it forward and backward. The red arrow, if I grab and drag on that, we'll move it along this axis. Green, we'll move it up and down. If we drag on the small blue square, it will scale one-dimensionally. Let me undo that by pushing Control Z. You can imagine this scales one-dimensionally along the red axis. This one does along the blue. If we want to scale it up three-dimensionally with an even, undistorted scale, we do that by clicking and dragging on that white cube in the center. And finally, we can rotate this form by using the arc here. And notice that a little dial appears here, so that if I want to rotate it 90 degrees, for example, I can just align my cursor to that dial and it will let me snap to that increment. Something else I'll point out about this widget is that, do you see how it has this circle on the exterior? The S, because that's turned on, it's snapping right now. So do you see how it's moving in, it looks like 2.5 degree increments? 2.5 unit increments rather. We can turn that off by just clicking on S. So now it's not snapping. Okay, so we could move this to be sort of at the center of the bunny like that if we want. And notice that this context menu popped up when we brought in the donut. Whenever we're happy with the location of the donut, we can press Enter or press Accept in that context menu to apply that transformation. Now let's add some additional geometry to the bunny. Oh, by the way, let me mention, notice that we can click from one form to the other to make either form active at this point. And so let's actually point out before we go on with adding additional stuff that we can open up the object browser. So if we click on View up top and where is it? Show Objects Browser. Now we have the bunny shown and the donut, which is represented by Mesh S012. So notice that when I click on the donut, it makes that the active layer in the object browser. Notice also that you can change the visibility of the objects by clicking on the eyeball there. So now the mesh is showing, but it's still, the mesh is not the donut mesh is not the active object. Once I click on it, it becomes the active object and the bunny is hidden. And the bunny I can make partially visible by clicking on it while the eyeball is closed. This actually can be fairly helpful sometimes if you're looking to better understand what's going on with the interior of the geometry. You might want to make it the active object, but turn the eyeball off just so that you can see through it.